If necessary, kill him 5 times, was the order given. Not one assassin, but 5. Not one chance, but 5 separate opportunities spread across 7 hours. 5 hitmen, 5 different locations in Harlem, 5 certain deaths. The order given on a cold March evening in 1951 was meant to eliminate Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, known by his nickname Bumpy. A death sentence had been issued for the man who controlled every numbers game, every betting bank, every street corner in Harlem. The Italian families had tried negotiating with Bumpy multiple times for the money flowing through Harlem. That wasn't enough, so they threatened him. But this man who stood like a mountain between them and the millions of dollars flowing there now had to disappear. The plan was methodical, precise, designed by men who had killed dozens before. By midnight, the first attempt would be made in front of a jazz club on Lenox Avenue. By 2 a.m., a second hitman would be waiting at a nightclub on 133rd Street. By 4 a.m., the third would strike near Bumpy's apartment. By 6 a.m., if the others somehow failed, 2 more hitmen would finish the job at Wells' restaurant. It was flawless. It was perfect. That evening, nothing seemed different in Harlem from any other Friday night. The streets were alive with music spilling from doorways, the smell of fried chicken and cigarette smoke mixing in the cold air. Bumpy Johnson sat in his usual booth at Lenox Lounge, sipping a glass of cognac while 3 local businessmen pitched their ideas about a new laundry on 125th Street. Bumpy listened with great attention, taking mental notes in the back of his mind. That was his way of working. He wasn't like the typical Mafia bosses. He was practically a politician without office, a king without a crown. The people of Harlem didn't fear him the way they feared other Mafia bosses. They had great respect for him. He would rush to help people in need. He was like a big brother, even a father figure, to families. That's where his power came from. Pure loyalty earned, more than armed men hired with money, was what made Bumpy Johnson a king. That was exactly what the other Italian Mafia families missed. Their problem was with Bumpy, the Mafia boss in Harlem. But the truth of the matter was that Bumpy was Harlem's family father. A man named Enzo Valenti stepped out of a black sedan on Lenox Avenue half an hour before midnight. He was 34 years old, a professional killer who had worked for the Genovese family for 11 years. He had killed 14 men in his criminal career, always clean, faithful to the plan, handling his business smooth as butter. Tonight would be his 15th. He checked his gun, a .38 caliber pistol with filed-off serial numbers, and walked toward the entrance of Lenox Lounge. What they had to do was simple. Go in, find the target, put 2 shots in his head, get out. A car would be waiting at the corner of 126th Street. By tomorrow morning, he'd be in Philadelphia with $13,000 in his pocket. Enzo had followed Bumpy's entire routine for exactly 3 weeks. He'd done his homework well. Every Friday night, the man sat in the same booth, back against the wall facing the door, never straying from his habits. An easy target. Enzo pushed open the front door, felt the warmth of the club wash over him, heard the jazz band playing something slow and melancholy. His eyes scanned the room, found the corner booth. It was empty. Enzo's blood ran cold. Bumpy Johnson had been there just moments ago. What was happening? What the hired killer, Enzo Valenti, didn't know was that someone had visited Bumpy Johnson exactly 12 minutes earlier. A young woman named Delilah, who worked as a cigarette girl at a downtown club frequented by Italian mobsters, had slipped in through the back entrance of Lenox Lounge. She found Bumpy in his booth and delivered the news that would save his life. "They're coming to kill you tonight. 5 different men," she said. Bumpy remained calm. He didn't ask any questions. He pulled a $100 bill from his pocket and pressed it into the girl's hand. He told her to disappear quietly. Then he slowly rose from where he sat and buttoned his jacket. Then he walked toward the kitchen with unhurried steps. The workers knew well by now not to ask questions. Bumpy could move freely, however he wanted, in any establishment in Harlem. This wasn't considered strange by anyone. In short, By the time Enzo Valenti walked in, Bumpy had already gone 3 blocks away. The first danger had passed. The first assassination attempt had ended in failure. The news reached the second hitman shortly after midnight. He was positioned outside the gambling house, where Bumpy was expected to arrive around 2 a.m. His name was Anthony Messina. The phone call had been very brief. Enzo missed. "Target is on the move. Hold your position." He was annoyed, cursing to himself as he hung up. A moving target meant a difficult target. Fortunately, there were others. Bumpy couldn't possibly know how many people were standing ready to kill him. Anthony checked his gun, a compact automatic pistol tucked under his coat, and settled in to wait. The gambling house was run by Otis Redmond, one of Bumpy's trusted men. If Bumpy was going to take shelter somewhere, this would definitely be the place. Anthony had counted the guards. 4 men, all armed, all positioned around the building. It wouldn't matter. His plan was to wait for Bumpy to enter, then call in the backup men standing ready. Within minutes, 9 more men would arrive. They would raid the building together. No survivors, no witnesses, clean and simple. But Bumpy Johnson didn't go to the gambling house on 133rd Street. Instead, he went to a small apartment on 140th Street, a place known only to his closest associates. 3 men were waiting inside. His most trusted man, someone called Illinois, his personal bodyguard, a former boxer named Cleveland, and a young information broker named Samuel, who had eyes and ears everywhere in the neighborhood. Bumpy closed the door behind him and got straight to the point. "Someone's trying to kill me tonight. I need to know who's behind this and how many there are." Samuel asked for 5 minutes and went to the other room to make a few phone calls before returning. He was tense, but his information was solid. Word on the street is the Genovese family put out a contract. Multiple hitmen, multiple assassination points planned. They want you dead before sunrise. Bumpy nodded slowly, processing the information. Multiple hitmen meant a coordinated operation. It meant someone with money and patience had planned this carefully. It also meant they were desperate. Desperate men made mistakes. "How many?" Bumpy asked. Samuel swallowed hard. 5, maybe more. They've got men at Lenox Lounge, the place on 133rd, your apartment, and Wells Restaurant. Those 4 are confirmed. The 5th is mobile, probably following you right now. For a long moment, Bumpy Johnson said nothing. He stood in the middle of that small apartment, hands clasped behind his back, eyes distant. Illinois, Cleveland, and Samuel watched him, waiting for orders, waiting for a sign of what would happen next. Finally, Bumpy spoke, and his voice was calm, almost peaceful. "They want to hunt me in my own neighborhood. 5 men think they can take everything I've built in one night." He turned to his men. "They're wrong. We're not hiding tonight. Tonight we're hunting them." The plan took shape quickly. Bumpy knew Harlem far better than any Italian hitman. He knew every alley, every rooftop, every hidden passage between buildings. More importantly, he knew the people. Every bartender, every doorman, every street vendor was a potential ally. The Italians were operating in enemy territory. They just didn't know how hostile it was yet. "Illinois," Bumpy said, "go to 133rd Street. Find out who's watching. Otis's place. Don't give yourself away. Just identify." He turned to Cleveland. "You're with me. Whoever's watching my apartment, we're going to pay them a visit." And to Samuel, "Spread the word. Quietly. Bumpy Johnson needs eyes tonight." By 1:30 a.m., the streets of Harlem had transformed. To a casual observer, nothing looked different. The same music played from the same clubs. The same couples walked arm in arm in the cold night air. But beneath the surface, a network was activating. Shoeshine boys who worked corners during the day became night sentinels. Taxi drivers who knew every street began cruising slowly, with eyes scanning for unfamiliar faces. Bartenders made quiet phone calls from back rooms. This was Bumpy Johnson's real power, the thing the Italian Mafia never understood. He hadn't conquered Harlem with violence. Within an hour, Bumpy had learned the location of every hitman. He knew their types, their vehicles, their weapons. Anthony Messina, waiting outside the gambling house on 133rd Street, had been spotted by a newspaper vendor who noticed his Brooklyn accent. The two men watching Bumpy's apartment had been seen by a janitor who noticed they'd been sitting in a parked car without moving for 3 hours. The net the Italians had cast was becoming visible, and Bumpy Johnson was about to tear it apart. He couldn't concede a goal in this game being played on his home turf. The second confrontation occurred at 2:17 a.m. outside Bumpy's apartment on 139th Street. Two men sat in a dark green sedan, engine idling, watching the front entrance. They had been there since 10 p.m., waiting for their target to return home. They didn't see Cleveland approaching from behind. In fact, they didn't hear him until he tapped on the driver's side window with the barrel of a shotgun. "Gentlemen," Cleveland said politely, "you seem lost. This is a residential area. Maybe I can help you find your way." The driver reached for his gun. Cleveland slowly shook his head. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. There are 4 men with rifles on that rooftop, 2 more on the street behind you. You're surrounded. We have firepower superiority, and you're a long way from home." The Italians looked up, saw shadows moving on the roof, saw the glint of metal in the moonlight. Their faces paled. "Now, here's how this is going to work," Cleveland continued. "Whoever sent you, you're going to go back to him. You're going to tell him Bumpy Johnson knows. He knows everything. And if anyone else comes to Harlem looking for trouble tonight or any other night, they won't leave alive." The 2 men drove away without a single shot fired. The news spread quickly. 2 more hitmen had been neutralized without doing anything, simply by being noticed. The operation was collapsing. But the Genovese family had invested too much money, too much planning, too much reputation to back down. At 3 a.m., a meeting was held at a social club in the Bronx. The remaining 3 hitmen were pulled from their positions and new orders were given. No more waiting. No more surveillance. Find Bumpy Johnson and kill him at any cost. Offer bounties to anyone who can give up his location. Turn Harlem against its own king with money. There must be people there who love money more. Find them and cooperate. It was a desperate strategy, but desperation was all they had. What they didn't understand was that Bumpy Johnson's Harlem couldn't be bought. His men couldn't be turned. For every dollar the Italians offered, Bumpy had done hundreds of favors over 30 years. He had buried their fathers, paid for their children's education, protected their businesses. Money couldn't compete with that kind of loyalty. The third hitman learned this lesson at 3:45 a.m. when he approached a group of young men on 128th Street, offering $500 for information about Bumpy's whereabouts. They smiled, took his money, and led him straight into an ambush. His name was Marco DeLuca, a 28-year-old hitman known for his brutality. He followed the young men into an alley off Frederick Douglass Boulevard, expecting to find a sellout informant who would give up Bumpy's location for cash. Instead, he found Bumpy Johnson sitting on a wooden crate, surrounded by 6 armed men. The alley was a dead end. There was no escape. "Marco DeLuca," Bumpy said, his voice echoing in the cold night air. "The Genovese family's favorite dog. They sent you all the way here to bite me, huh?" Marco's hand moved toward his gun, but 3 weapons were already aimed at his chest. He froze. "You can try," Bumpy continued, "but I promise, you won't finish drawing your gun before my men put you down. So let's have a conversation instead, like civilized people." Marco had no choice. He stood there, surrounded, while the lights of a plan flickered in Bumpy Johnson's eyes. What was going to happen now? By 4:30 a.m., 4 of the 5 hitmen had been found. Bumpy had ordered a nice gift for the Genovese family. He had ordered his watchmaker friend to make an expensive, ornate wall clock. He had already prepared the note he would write inside. He wanted them to hang this clock in their office and remember this night every time they looked at it. They needed to learn not to mess with him. They needed to learn they couldn't enter Harlem in any way. Only one last step remained. The final hitman needed to be found. The hour before dawn passed very slowly. Bumpy Johnson stood at the window of the safe house on 140th Street, watching the sky begin to brighten in the east. His men had performed flawlessly throughout the night. The informant network had provided perfect intelligence. Every trap had been set. Every hunter had become prey. But the last hitman was still out there somewhere, and Bumpy knew he couldn't hide forever. He wasn't made for hiding. He was made for confrontation, for walking into rooms where people wanted to see him dead and walking out with their respect. "Illinois," Bumpy said quietly. "What do we know about Wells?" Illinois stepped forward with a notebook. "The restaurant opens at 5:30 for staff. Your usual table is in the back corner, facing the door. Windows on two sides. 3 possible sniper positions. The roof across the street, the fire escape of the adjacent building, a parked car with a view of the entrance." Bumpy nodded. "And our men?" "We have men on every rooftop within 2 blocks. Taxi drivers circling the area. All the staff inside are loyal." There was a pause. "But we still can't find the 5th hitman. He could be anywhere." Bumpy Johnson made his decision the way he made every decision, with absolute certainty and without hesitation. "We're going to Wells," he said. "I won't hide from one man, not in my own neighborhood, not after what we accomplished tonight." His men exchanged tense glances but knew better than to argue. When Bumpy Johnson set his course, no force on earth could change it. At 5:45 a.m., a small convoy began moving through the still dark streets of Harlem. Bumpy was in the driver's seat of the middle car, flanked by vehicles full of armed men in front and behind. The route was variable, unpredictable, taking side streets and alleys to avoid every possible ambush. At 5:55 a.m., they arrived at Wells' restaurant. The place was just opening, chairs being taken down from tables, the smell of coffee beginning to fill the air. Bumpy got out of his car and stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, making himself visible, inviting the 5th hitman to fire. Nothing happened. The street was quiet. The rooftops were clear. Slowly, surrounded by his men, Bumpy Johnson walked through the front door of Wells' restaurant and sat down at his corner table, settling into the same seat he had occupied for 20 years. Minutes stretched into an hour. Bumpy ate his breakfast slowly. Eggs, bacon, grits, toast with butter, black coffee. He read the morning paper, commented on the headlines to his men, even made a few phone calls from the booth about routine business matters. To anyone watching, it looked like an ordinary morning, but beneath the surface, everyone in that restaurant was extremely tense. Cleveland stood by the door, his hand never leaving his gun. Illinois watched the windows, tracking every shadow outside, every movement. The staff moved quietly, efficiently, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Where was the 5th hitman? Had he abandoned the mission after learning of the others' failures? Had he decided the risk was too high? Or was he out there somewhere, watching, waiting for the perfect moment? The answer came at 7:23 a.m., when a tall man in a gray coat walked through the front door of Wells' restaurant and took a seat at the counter, his back to Bumpy Johnson. He ordered coffee. His hands were steady. His eyes were calm. Cleveland spotted him immediately. He fit the description the informants had mentioned exactly. For several minutes, nothing happened. The man in the gray coat sipped his coffee. Bumpy Johnson finished his breakfast. The tension in the restaurant was thick enough to cut with a knife, but to anyone looking in from outside, everything appeared normal. Then Bumpy did something that surprised everyone, including his own men. He rose from the corner booth, crossed the restaurant, and sat on the stool next to the man in the gray coat. The man's body went rigid. His right hand began moving toward his jacket. But Bumpy was faster. Not with a gun, with words. "You've been sitting there for 8 minutes," Bumpy said quietly, "and you haven't touched your coffee since the first sip. Your right hand keeps drifting to your left side. I'm guessing there's a pistol there. And you've looked at the mirror behind the counter exactly 12 times, watching my reflection." The man's face remained expressionless, but a small muscle in his jaw twitched. "I know who you are," Bumpy continued. "I know who sent you, and I know you're wondering if you can draw your gun before my men put 3 bullets in your spine." The man in the gray coat didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there, frozen, caught between the mission he had been paid to complete and the knowledge that if he tried, he would certainly die. Bumpy let the silence stretch for a long moment before continuing. "Let me tell you something. Your employers clearly didn't explain. I've survived this long, not because I'm the fastest or the strongest. I survived because I understand something they never will. Harlem isn't a place. It's not a territory to be conquered. It's a family. And you can't kill a family's father without the children rising up to destroy you." He gestured around the restaurant. The staff, the customers, his men. All were watching. All were ready. There are 43 people in this room right now. Every one of them would die for me. Not because I pay them, not because I threaten them, because I spent 30 years earning their loyalty. Bumpy got up from the counter. He got in his car and left. The man in the gray coat sat motionless for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly, carefully, he moved his right hand away from his jacket and placed both palms flat on the counter. "I've killed a lot of men," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. 37 exactly. Politicians, businessmen, other mob bosses. Nobody saw me coming. Nobody knew my name. But I've never walked into a room where everyone inside was ready to die for one man. That's something money can't buy. That's something fear can't create. Nobody ever heard from any of the 5 hitmen on duty that night again. They were never seen anywhere. Hundreds of different legends emerged about what happened to them, but nobody actually knew what happened to them. 2 days later, the gift Bumpy Johnson had ordered for the Genovese family was ready. It was placed in a beautiful, elegant package. Inside was placed a note that read, "If you come for me, again you'll need to build an army. Let this clock remind you of every minute I live. Have a nice day." Bumpy Johnson was proof that power doesn't come from violence alone. Power came from kindness and loyalty. You can fight a large mafia group, but fighting a large family is very difficult. Because family is everything. You'll do anything to protect your family. Your family is your greatest security. Years after that night, when Bumpy Johnson died, he died as a family father who had never lost any battle he entered. It's said that tens of thousands of people attended his funeral. Just imagine what a large family that was. This was one of the longest nights in Harlem history. 5 assassins marched into Bumpy Johnson's kingdom, and none of them could complete their mission. But the question that keeps me up at night is this: was Bumpy's victory really about guns and planning, or was it about something deeper? Bumpy proved that loyalty beats money every time. Have you ever witnessed anyone around you receiving this much respect? Could you earn such respect? If you were in Bumpy Johnson's place that night, what would you have done differently? We're waiting for your answers in the comments section. If you enjoyed listening to this story, hit the like button and subscribe. More legendary Bumpy Johnson stories are coming, and believe me, the next one is even crazier.